People who proudly self-identify as a slut. What sexual experience are you most proud of? Had a situation worked out with a neighbor that I was attracted to, where he would come over and go down on me on his lunch break while I was getting ready for my shift. We'd watch each other's cats when the other person went out of town. We never communicated unless it was about pussy eating or pussy watching. Best relationship I never had. I had a similar neighbor. She would call me after a date left and ask me if I had enough to round two. Had a completely neighborly relationship apart from that. Alas, she moved to Texas. 3 years ago I was at work in the auto accident industry, faxing a dealership in the area that we worked with. I got a call from a woman asking for invoices for our mutual customers. After sending them over to her, she called back and asked for a couple more. She had a very sexy sounding voice, and she sounded like she was in my general age range. I knew most of the people who worked at this location, but she did not sound familiar at all. A few days prior to this I was at the dealership she worked at and saw someone who looked amazing from the back, all I could see of her, talking to their parts department. The only reason someone would talk to parts with a clipboard in hand would be if they worked there. Every other woman who worked there was in their 40s or up. So during the phone call I decided to start flirting, praying to sweet Jesus it was her. I sent her the invoices with funny self-portraits of me drawn on them, doing winky faces and weird shit like that. She called back to say she liked the pictures but thinks we shouldn't do that on work documents. So she gave me her number to text her. We exchanged Instagrams after a couple messages and I was right, it was the girl with the hourglass A-classes from the day past. We both got off work at the same time, went and got a few drinks, and then it was back to her place for some certified fornication. She drove me back to work the next morning, and when my boss asked who dropped me off and why my car was still there, I had to explain that our professional relationship with the dealership down the street had evolved into a sexual relationship. TL. Doctor, in 2015 I faxed my way into bed with someone. A feat that, if ever, was likely last accomplished somewhere before 1999. When my foster parents sent me to gay conversion camp to make me straight, I learned how to make a dude come in under a minute. Also how to make friendship bracelets. But I learned how, and still can get a dude off in under a minute with only my mouth. 3 that stand out. Duck the mascot at my college. Hooked up with someone on the roof of my hotel in Athens, Greece. Had a perfect week by just messaging Tinder guys my address. I once had a friend with benefits. She would occasionally bring a friend along. One such time they both stayed the night, and we continued things in the morning, which was awesome. They went their way, and that night my ex called for a one-night rebound. And that's how I slept with 3 women in one day on accident. On accident? Sounds pretty intentional to me, haha. Don't qualify to be called a slut, but I did duck my boyfriend the first night we met. He was just so goddamn hot and I couldn't stop thinking about him banging me. I hadn't had much sex before him, so I never really spread my wings and became a slutterfly. And I don't ever intend to now. Most fun was probably being tied to a bed for a weekend and serving as entertainment for a party. Not sure exactly how many different people ducked me, but I think it was around a dozen. How does one get into this line of work? Probably a Yellow Pages ad. In my party days I once managed 3 guys in one day. And on my birthday at that. The first guy was actually planned. He was a longtime friend with benefits. The second guy was a definite surprise because I'd been crushing on him for months, and when I ran into him while getting a coffee he said he'd love to give me a birthday massage. Well, I live just around the corner, so I invited him over. The third guy was another friend with benefits at my birthday party that night. He dragged me away during the festivities and bent me over my dryer. I told the other 2 guys about the previous adventures, and I showered between each guy and used protection. It was a fun day. Wasn't trying to be a slut at the time. Was actually quite the opposite. But the summer between community college and uni I had a polyamorous relationship with my friend and her girlfriend. I lost my virginity to her girlfriend. Then would go out with my friend or visit her girlfriend on the weekends. All culminating to a threesome weekend with them where I knocked everything off my bucket list. That summer was 0 to 100 for sure. And I will never forget it. Unfortunately now I'm a sad man who just got dumped recently after a long-term relationship. But I'm trying to get my game back and keep that experience in mind as reassurance. So I know I can be single again. I lost my virginity in a threesome. In a tent. At a music festival. When I was 14. Was it 2 other 14-year-olds? Please be with 2 other 14-year-olds. I'm a girl from the States and Elle was ducked against the Hallgrímskirkja church while on vacation in Iceland by an attractive Croatian man who whispered in my ear, "I bet you weren't expecting this during your vacation." It was 5 AM because that's when the bars close there and basically broad daylight because the sun doesn't fully set that time of year. I ducking love Iceland. Me and my ex ducked on a pile of clothes near a train station downtown. At 8 in the morning. In full view of office buildings. When I was 18 or 19, a man in his 40s had messaged me on a dating website I was on. I was single and looking to ducking mingle. He propositioned me for money. He wanted me to meet up with him and blow him for cash. I had nothing else to do so agreed. When I was close to the location and he spotted me. He texted me to follow him but keep a distance. We ended up in a supermarket bathroom where I was on my knees in a second sucking this stranger's big dick. It took him less than 5 minutes to come and I swallowed it all. He handed me the cash. Thanked me. And walked out so I could tidy myself up, reapply la PETC. Afterwards we both ended up next to each other buying a drink at the self-service checkouts. We never exchanged looks or talked since. TL. Doctor, I blew a dude twice my age for cash once. I ducked a dude several times in the show apartment in my complex BC. We didn't have anywhere else and I didn't wanna duck in his car. So we broke in. We dated for 9 months after that. Having slept with 13 people in 2 years of being sexually active, 3 men 10 women. That makes me happy. Most proud? Making my new girlfriend come in under 2 minutes using only 1 finger. Since I was really nervous and it was our first time. I wanted to perform well. She was number 13. Edit, nothing to see here lol. I slept with 2 guys in 24 hours. Both for the first time. Both of them were called Maximum. I kept hooking up with both. But when inebriated I would forget which Max was which in my phone. So I would basically toss a coin and pray I had the one I wanted that night coming over. Well, my husband and I technically ducked on the first date. We were in high school. Granted. We'd been together for 7 months or so. But hadn't been allowed out on a date because his mom hated me. So when she finally relented and let him use the car on a Sunday to take me out to eat. We immediately found a vacant parking lot at the local junior high and smashed in the backseat to Metallica. Then we got ice cream. I have 2. I mentioned one before on Reddit. When I was in college. An older classmate kept hitting on me. In the heat of the moment. I asked if he wanted a BJ. Straight after class I blew him in his car in the dead heat. It'd been a while since he had any sexual contact with a woman. He was old enough to be my dad. The second experience was finally getting cream-peed. It has always been a fantasy of mine. I usually don't let guys in me without a condom, but I trusted this guy. I begged for it and got loaded. 10/10 would do it again. I had a one-night stand with a girl. Drove home to my mother saying you're going to church, showered and cleaned up. Went to church and ended up getting head in the old sound booth while the choir sang glory to the Lord. Ended my weekend with a quick Tinder hookup car head before going to work on Monday. That ended up being the best weekend other than my birthday weekend. Had a threesome with my ex with a les. The les claimed she only wanted to duck me and we were both cool and understanding of that. She ended up, in the heat of the moment, asking him and asked me if it was okay if he would duck her, and it was so ducking hot. Then when we were done, She starts ducking seizing. Like a straight up mild seizure. I went into first aid mode and she was able to come out of it in a matter of minutes. I'd like to think we ducked a girl together so well that she had a seizure. Either the threesome or a seething head while standing upright on the rooftop of a college building during sunrise. Or possibly the time I spent a year living with FWB partners to avoid living out of my car. Although that was actually a very quasi-domestic sort of dynamic. Not exactly slutty. However, after some thought, the sexual experience I'm probably the most proud of is when I gave my now ex-girlfriend 12 consecutive orgasms. She had never climaxed with a partner before we started dating. Although we definitely both identified as slutty individuals. After it was over, all the windows in her apartment were completely fogged up. And ever since that night she refers of that event to her friends as the 12. My slutty phase began with a game where the two of us, after Thanksgiving, on an abandoned college campus because neither of us went home, took a twister board and covered half of it in vodka shots. And you had a choice between a shot or a blank space where you'd have to take off an item of clothing. 10/10 recommend strip drink twister. I'm proud of that one because it's what finally got me comfortable with just doing whatever I want. Went on to fool around another like 8 months. Won't get into the slutty details about everyone else I was fooling around with in those 8 months. I even got to have a mini reunion a couple weeks ago after not seeing him for 2 years, which felt like a nice bow to wrap up my slutty phase with. Edit. Took out a tidbit of almost self-identification. Edit 2. Added a detail. So the first time I ever vaginally fisted someone was at a party in this dark basement dungeon. And I had gone full butch daddy and shown up in, like, a motorcycle jacket and a white v-neck t-shirt. Afterwards, when the party was over, it was super cold and I threw my jacket on and went home. When I got back to my apartment, she texted me that she'd gotten her period. So I opened my jacket and there was a glorious bloody print of the inside of her thighs all over the front of my shirt. I still feel like I should have framed that thing. My first nail fisting story was not quite as dramatic, but I'm still pretty duckin' chuffed about it. My time to shine. Walked a girl back to her dorm and stayed just to smoke with her. Had some of the roughest sex of my life. Got blood on her wall from my back. Would so do again. Had a cute, but crazy and itchy to everyone, les roommate in dorms my freshman year. She was itchy but could dominate like no other, and I still get wet thinking about the things I got her to do to me. Hooked up with a friend. Drove her to pick up her BF. Hung with them for the day and ended up in a threesome. Went thrift shopping with a girl. Thrift shopping turned into getting my brains ducked out and her buying me some Gomez pizza. We actually ended up dating for a bit, but she had recently been dumped and it was a bad idea. I'm getting married now. And I'm very happy, but back in the day I was quite a baller and this comment might come across pretty egotistical. I had just left school. Living alone. And I was making a lot more than my friends who were studying and living with their parents. And I remember being influenced by Barney from him. I would dress up to go out and I started hanging out with girls exclusively. This group of 7 girls. We'd go out and I'd make it a joke, but I'd get them to line up in order of height when we went to clubs and shit. And I had steadily been hooking up with them one by one. I was aware I might seem like the gay friend but duck the other people. One night, one of the girls makes a joke, all we need is a bottle of vodka and a camera and we can have an orgy. The stage is set. It's on everyone's minds. Drinks are flowing all night and we end up going to the one girl's house. I have some coke, 3 of the girls used. And convinced the others to try. Typing this out now, I can't believe I wasn't nervous about it. I knew it would be legendary. At one point we're all dancing and the girls are telling me to take my shirt off. I used to gym with steroids and also, like any gym person, I was waiting for this. The ducking girls have all got their hands on me. One's kissing my chest and one's on the lips, and I get a call from a mate. He knew where I was and he showed up here. This guy is a notorious virgin but also did drugs, so. Anyway. He shows up. Proceeds to sit in the corner and invite like 3 other virgin nerds over. the mood is ruined. I never got my orgy. God damn it, I was so close. I put my whole fist in my ex's vag while we were still dating, and she thoroughly enjoyed it. Meanwhile, I, a guy, never got past putting a small butt plug in my ass. She's probably out there living out her pegging fantasy with someone else now. I have always considered it my patriotic duty to support our troops. I got picked up by Humvee load of National Guard guys on patrol and they took me to meet up with a second group. I showed them my support the best I could by servicing them,